Introducing black number 17. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Kathy from the Delafield Quilt Company. And this summer, I've been sewing a slow Summer Stars series where I've been sewing a variety of star blocks, 19 in total, to make up the slow Summer Stars quilt. Today's video is block number 17 of that series. We have just 2 more to go after this. If you're interested in following along with this series, please visit our website at delafieldquiltco.com, where I've got a link to all of the cutting instructions and the videos from the other blocks. All right, let's get started with block number 17. So I've already got all the pieces cut for block 17 because I'm using up a lot of the scraps I had from the other blocks, and I wanted a good variety for this one. So the pieces we need for this block are a variety of squares. First, we need 4 3 7/8 inch squares. And then from the scrap fabric, we need 1 2.5 inch square, 2 2.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles, 4 4.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles, and 2 6.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles. And then for the background fabric, we need a 7 1/4 inch square and 4 3.5 inch squares. Okay, this block is pretty easy to sew together, and I think it's interesting because it's got all this variety of fabrics in it. The first thing we're going to do is make the outer part. We're going to use my favorite method of no waste flying geese, 4 at a time. And so I'm going to take the fabric A, which is the 3 7/8 inch squares, and on the back of each of these, I'm going to just draw a line from one diagonal corner to the other side. And I am going to use my 45.5 degree mark to help me make this one. And I do put my ruler just slightly below the points to allow for the thickness of my pencil. And you aren't going to see this line because we're going to actually cut on it when we're done sewing. So it really doesn't matter if you use a pencil or maybe a different fabric friendly pen. And then I'm just going to repeat that on the back of all of the 4 3 7/8 inch squares. I really like the no waste flying geese method because it's a quick way to make 4 at a time flying geese with very little waste. Right, now that I've got those lines drawn, I'm going to take my 7 1/4 inch of the background fabric, and I'm just going to layer 2 of these squares that I just drew lines on so that their line lines up on the diagonal of this larger background square. I am putting just a couple pins in here just to make sure that these squares stay in place. Alright, now I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of the line. Okay, again, I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of this line, and I'm going to use my 1/4 inch foot to help me with that. Now I've got one side sewn, so I'm just going to cut strings, turn it around, and sew 1/4 inch on the other side of the line. Okay, now that I've got that 1/4 inch sewn on both sides of the line, I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm going to cut right on that pencil line. Okay, now I'm just going to press this so the seams go towards these small triangles here. Alright, now that I've got these pressed, I'm just going to take my last 2 squares here, and I'm just going to line that up so that line goes from the unsewn point here of the background fabric and ends in between these 2 triangles here. And then I'm just going to put a pin to keep that in place. Same with this other guy here. And now I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of the line like I did before. Now that I got these sewn, I am just going to again grab my ruler and cut right on that pencil line. And without much effort, we've got 4 flying geese. And I'm just going to again press the same towards the triangle here. And then the unfinished sides of these should measure 3.5 inches by 6.5 inches wide. You may need to trim them down a little bit. Mine look like they're pretty good. So I'm just going to trim off those dog ears and then I'll be ready to move on. Okay, the next part of this block is to make the courthouse steps. It's going to be the middle of the star. This one's pretty simple. We're going to start with our 2.5 inch square and we're going to sew a 2.5 inch by 1.5 inch strip on both sides of that square. And then once we've sewn this together, then we're going to press and we're going to add the 4.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles to this section. So let me sew this part first and then we'll move on to the next. When sewing this pattern, it's really important to have an accurate 1/4 inch seam. We're using a scant 1/4 inch. If you're not sure how accurate your scant 1/4 inch is, this is a good way to kind of test it. So when I'm done sewing both of these sides on, my square should be exactly 2 inches if I'm using that scant 1/4 inch. Okay, I did press away from the center square, and as I'm making these courthouse steps, I'm going to continue to press away from the center. And I'm just going to check to make sure my scant 1/4 inch is accurate. And to do that, I want to make sure it's exactly 2 inches from this piece to that piece, and it looks like it is pretty darn good. Alright, now I just need to put these 4.5 inch rectangles on each of the sides here. Then we're going to take 2 more of our 4.5 inch strips, and that should line up pretty nicely. If it's off, just check your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, last 2 strips we're going to put on next, and these should be 6.5 by 1.5 inch rectangles. Alright, the little courthouse step center of the block is done. And this should measure 6.5 inches square. That looks pretty good. And then to assemble this block, we're just going to sew a flying geese on 2 of the sides. And then we're going to take the other flying geese, put our 3.5 inch squares on each of those sides. And then we'll just sew this all together. So I'm going to sew this and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. And there we have finished block number 17. I hope that you liked this tutorial. If you're following along, that is awesome. We only have a few more blocks to go and then we'll be done with the Slow Summer Stars series. Thank you so much for watching this video today. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do so and visit us at DelafieldQuiltCo.com. Have a great day.